Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu both voiced their support for Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban in the elections, and this surprised many people. The US president called Orban a strong leader who showed the whole world how to protect his country's borders, culture, heritage, sovereignty, and values. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister of Israel stated that Orban, quote, protects Western civilization from a wave of radical fanatical Muslims. At the same time, the main leaders of Europe, that is Merz, Macron and Starmer, on the contrary, turned away from Orban and even blocked the Hungarians. Access to the secrets of the European Union after the scandal that Orban and his foreign minister Szijjártó had been leaking classified information to the Russians for years. But in this story, many are interested in the main question. Why and for what reason do Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu so fiercely support Viktor Orban? In this episode, we'll break it down, but I want to say right away it's not about personal sympathies, but about simple political calculation. My name is Alexei Peci, and this is my personal project, Conspiracy Theories, where we expose conspiracy theories and break down complex geopolitical processes into simple details. So, if we look at the situation globally, Hungary today looks like the epicenter of a new world order within the West. While old Europe, represented by Berlin, Paris and London, is trying to hold on to the fading era of transatlantic unity, it seems like some kind of new alliance is forming in Hungary. If you look at Hungary through the eyes of an American or an Israeli, Orban is not an outcast at all, but rather a key liaison between Washington, Jerusalem and Brussels. US President Donald Trump recently expressed his full support for Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban ahead of the parliamentary elections on April 12th. It should be noted right away exactly what event this was all said at. Yesterday, a conservative political action conference was held in Budapest, attended by figures who hold conservative, nationalist and Eurosceptic views. And at this conference, Trump called Orban a strong leader who showed the whole world how to protect his borders. Culture, heritage, sovereignty and values. He expressed his full support for the Hungarian Prime Minister and said he hopes for his complete victory. After that, the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, also supported Viktor Orban. Quote, the Hungarian government is protecting Western civilization from a wave of radical fanatical Muslims. You need leaders who are able to protect against this rising wave as well as provide security and stability for their people. Viktor Orban has this in abundance. I know many world leaders and I can tell you that he is right at the top. So, to understand why this political triangle of Trump, Orban, Netanyahu has become so strong, you need to, set aside sentiments and emotions and look behind the scenes. And for Donald Trump, who is in the midst of his second presidential term, Viktor Orban is not just some foreign colleague. No, he is living proof that his Make America Great Again concept can be successfully implemented even in the face of strong resistance from bureaucratic elites. And analysts from the European Council of Foreign Relations, in their fundamental study titled Orbanization of America, emphasize that the Hungarian scenario has become a handbook for Trump. And friends, looking ahead, I want to say right away that I can share all these studies that I read and mention in these episodes, for example, in my Telegram channel Peci News. The link to it is in the description. If you want to read them, subscribe and write to me. I will send you all these studies so you can read them in full. So, in this study, the following is stated, quote, the Orbanization of America is not just a metaphor, it's a deliberate strategy in which political power is used for systematic dismantling. Системы сдержек и противовесов. Trump sees in Orban a man who managed to tame the courts, the media, and non-governmental organizations while maintaining legitimacy through the support of the majority. For the White House, this is not autocracy, but effective sovereignty. That's exactly why Viktor Orban feels so familiar to Donald Trump. Unlike British Prime Minister Keir Starmer or French President Emmanuel Macron, Orban obviously doesn't lecture Washington about democratic backsliding values and so on. Orban speaks the language of national egoism, which Trump understands instantly. National egoism is the same as isolationism. That is, thinking about yourself first and only then about everyone else. When Trump argues with Starmer over trade tariffs or mocks Macron for his attempts to create a European army, he sees them as representatives of some old guard that stands in the way of his transactional diplomacy. Orban, on the other hand, is like one of his own guys in a foreign camp, and it benefits Trump to keep a sort of bogeyman like Orban inside Europe to show the rest of Europe exactly what kind of politicians he can find common ground with. This is essentially a certain influence on the electorate in other countries as well. The situation with Benjamin Netanyahu is even more complicated. For the Israeli Prime Minister, who, by the way, in 2026 is fighting such a difficult battle on two fronts at once, military in the Middle East and legal in The Hague, Budapest has become his main European advocate. When Hungary officially blocked another European Union resolution condemning Israel's actions last week, it was not a surprise. It was part of a long-term pact, if you will. Because earlier, for example, Hungary withdrew last year from the International Criminal Court, which declared Netanyahu wanted and issued an arrest warrant. That's why Hungary is like a European haven for Netanyahu. That is, for example, the other European countries, as part of the ICC, are supposed to arrest Netanyahu if he comes to them. Hungary is no longer obligated to do this, so, sorry, Netanyahu can easily get into Europe. However, analysts from Just Security view this with some concern. In their article Autocracy, Corruption and Decline, it is noted that this kinship between Netanyahu and Orban is built on a shared rejection of international legal institutions. Again, I quote, "Viktor Orban's model replaces the traditional rule of law with rule by law." This is exactly what Netanyahu desperately needs today to neutralize pressure from the International Criminal Court and internal opposition. Budapest is becoming a laboratory where methods for bypassing international oversight are being tested. For Netanyahu, Viktor Orban is a guarantee that Israel's voice will be heard in Brussels even if the rest of the continent decides to turn away from it. This is strategic depth purchased at the cost of ideology. And depth. And here, it's hard not to notice the contrast between how Donald Trump welcomes and supports Viktor Orban and how he rejects and criticizes Keir Starmer, Emmanuel Macron, and Friedrich Merz. That is, the contrast is obvious. And as Chatham House notes, the conflict is embedded in the very structure of interests. And these interests, let's say, usually rely on some kind of personal gain. Interests. The leaders of Germany, France, and the United Kingdom are still trying to preserve the remnants of the liberal world order based on rules. For Donald Trump, these rules are just shackles on the feet of the American economy. Economy. While Merz is trying to build Zeitenwende 2.0, this is his policy for to protect German industry. Donald Trump sees this as protectionism directed against the US. Orban, on the other hand, does not claim global leadership. He just wants to trade profitably and control his own territory, which makes him an ideal partner for the White House. Starmer, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, who is trying to balance between loyalty to NATO and economic ties with the European Union, looks to Trump like a man from the past. Macron, with his intellectual snobbery, only irritates the current US administration. Against this background, Orban seems crystal clear. He wants power at home and money from abroad. As a result, in this situation, we are dealing with the highest level of political pragmatism. Let's be honest, Donald Trump's support for Orban is an incredible show of faith in him as a leader. No, of course not. This is using Budapest as a Trojan horse inside the European Union. Because the fragmentation of the European Union is the best gift for Donald Trump. Why? Because Donald Trump has long stated that he wants to negotiate with each country individually, not with a unified European bloc. It's more beneficial for him to make separate deals with Germany, France, Britain, though Britain is no longer in the EU, and others. And this fragmentation of Europe is very much to his advantage, and Orban is an example that this fragmentation can be set in motion. And indeed, for Orban, support from Trump and Netanyahu is a matter of survival. In a situation where Brussels is freezing Hungarian funds, Budapest needs new sources of legitimacy and investment. And now, American tech giants focused on a conservative agenda like Elon Musk and also Israeli security startups are already actively entering the Hungarian market. In political science, there is a concept called the axis of sovereignty. This is a kind of partnership where each participant uses the other to strengthen their own position within their own country. Viktor Orban gains the status of a global player because he communicates with Trump, Netanyahu, Javier Milei, for example. Trump gets a loyal ally inside Europe plus a Trojan horse in the European Union. And Netanyahu gets a diplomatic shield inside the European Union. And everyone can tell their electorate that they have super close ties with other players, even if Europe as a whole doesn't support Trump's or Netanyahu's approaches. But it's worth remembering that in pure politics, there's never any place for this eternal friendship. As soon as the interests of Washington and Jerusalem change, Budapest may be left alone. As long as these interests coincide, they will support Viktor Orban in every possible way. I'll leave it there for now. Friends, share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this episode interesting and useful, you can support the work of this YouTube channel financially through any donation, subscription, or sponsorship on YouTube. All the links and details on how to do this are in the description of this video or via the QR code on your screens. Take care of yourselves. Bye, everyone.